Good morning, everybody. This is AD117, WebSockets pushing the web forward. My name is Mark Roden. I work for PSC Group based out of Chicago. I have been doing Domino for probably as long as most of all of you, almost entirely as a web developer. I haven't actually done a Notes client application since 1998, and that's awesome. I'm principal architect at PSC Group. I've been doing X Pages for 4 years, but I have moved more from being just a straight up developer now to project leader and architect, and also broadening out into other technologies such as WebSockets. I'm an IBM champion, have been for 2 years, and thank you to everybody who nominated me for that. And it's coming up again, just in case, you know, anybody's not too disgusted with this presentation. If you want to get in touch with me, the best place to find me is on Twitter, at Marky Roden. And I'm having a lot of fun, I will tell you that much. So yes, PSC, except for the man in the middle, are a great bunch of people. Oh, who's that?
You don't want to know.
Yeah, this guy went to work as a SharePoint manager as one of these guys. So yes, we don't talk about him, but we don't have a better picture right now. But we are a sponsor of MWLUG this year and are very proud to be so. Okay. So basically today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about WebSockets. What are they? What do they do? Why do you care? When do you use it? How do you use it? Why do you use it? And we're going to talk about servers. We're going to talk, Socket.io is a specific WebSocket server that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to do some demonstrations. For those of you that have smartphones, as one of the demonstrations we are going to play a game. If you have a QR code reader on your phone, then I'm going to bring one up so you can get to the site nice and quickly. But I'm also going to put the URL up for those of you that want to type it. Okay? All right. So, what are WebSockets? Basically, WebSockets is a way for two ends of the conversation to actually talk to each other. So, when you make an HTTP request to the server, you are always starting that conversation. Whether it's a GET or whether it's a POST or whatever it is, you ask the server either to do something, well, always to do something, whether you will say, give me this information, or process this information, you always start the conversation. With WebSockets, once you've made the initial connection, the web server can start the conversation. It doesn't have to wait for you. So just like on your phones, when you get notifications that you have new email, it's not because your phone keeps asking the server, it's because the server has the ability to push a notification to you saying you actually have a new email. Okay? And there are many... That is probably not the best place to sit.
There's a chair right there.
Chair. Oh, I got this one, thank you. How about this one? Is this better?
Up to you. If I stand on you, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So there are many advantages to actually letting the server talk to you, as opposed to you always talking to the server. And we're going to look at some of that. So what does all that even mean? All right. So WebSockets is relatively new. It's only been around for a few years, although like everything HTML.
See, now he's
Well, I'm not going to make any excuses for him. I don't care if I block him. So it's relatively new, but like everything HTML5, the adoption within browsers is really, really quick. And we'll come to see what browsers can and can't actually use WebSockets. It's extremely efficient. Although you may not realize it or have had to think about it, most HTTP requests are actually really inefficient, and we'll see why. And because of that, it minimizes latency. So if you're on a really slow connection to somebody working in the middle of East Africa or something, minimizing latency is really, really important. If you're on a corporate network every day, you really don't care. Okay, so what overhead? HTTP overhead. This is a relatively small HTTP header request going to a website. And all of this information is really, really useful to your browser. It tells you about where am I going, what am I doing, who am I, what, you know, you've got the date, you've got your session information. This is what allows you to do session-based authentication. Tells you what kind of browser, so that the server can actually process all of this information. But that's like 800 bytes. Well, if you're downloading small images that are 2 or 3K, this is an enormous overhead. Okay? Obviously, if you're downloading a 3 meg file, probably not. But over time, if lots of people are using your website and they're all doing this all the time, it actually adds up quite significantly. Am I done yet? You know,
it's done.
I really should have started this so I know actually how long I'm taking. Right. So, as compared to that, when you actually communicate using WebSockets, it is nothing more than data. There is no overhead at all. It literally is a text string data. So this is 86 bytes. This little message, 86 bytes. That's all it is. Nothing more, nothing less. So if you wanted to send a message to the page that says, "Hi Marky," then you're sending 1 kilobyte, and I realize 1 kilobyte isn't much, but it's 1 kilobyte's worth of header and like 8 bytes worth of text. It's, you know, so WebSockets is just text backwards and forwards, nothing more, nothing less. So it is very short, it's very discreet, it's very efficient. You really genuinely couldn't get more efficient than that kind of communication. And you have complete control over what goes in there. As we'll come to see, a lot of times we communicate using JSON format, but that's because it makes sense from a programmer's perspective to actually take your message in that format. So, before WebSockets, we have polling. Okay? So, I just want to do a quick demo of what I mean by polling. So, ignore the man on the screen. If I just go to CNN, alright? Dead simple. Idiot.
You need to get better Ashley Madison today.
Yeah. Alright, so, not only is this a 3 megabyte page, okay, and we'll just leave it at that, and this is where the internet in here stops, and this actually, there you go. Alright, so when the internet in here actually works, as that's running, what you will see is, come on, it's a really, 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 really unnecessarily big site. But what you will see is, every second, there's this thing going on. Every second, it's constantly asking the server, constantly. Because what they want to be able to do is at the top, they want to say, "Breaking news! Somebody did something stupid." You know? But, unless you refresh your page, you won't know that somebody did something stupid. You know? But every second, every single person on the CNN website is asking the server, has somebody done something stupid? Alright? So if they have thousands of concurrent users, which they do, they have to be able to handle those current users concurrently, constantly. That is polling. Okay? Has anything changed? Has anything changed? Has anything changed? That's what I mean by polling, and I'm going to turn that off, because the other thing is, unless your browser's really good at memory management, that adds up. Internet Explorer users, ignore that. Alright, so has anything changed? No, come on, stop wasting my time. Your server has to be robust enough to be able to handle all of these requests. And even if something has changed, they're only going to send back a short message saying, somebody did something stupid. Alright? And then you have to wait for them to go get it. Big overhead. That's how HTTP polling works. Or even worse, what you can do is you can actually make a request to a page that only actually responds when it has something to say. So it's called long polling. So purposefully, the server is set up so it won't actually respond to you unless it has something to say. Well, that really ties up the resources on your browser and is an unpredictable load on the server on the other end. Really don't like that at all. So, okay. This is generally what happens. So, Right? I've asked for something, I've asked for something, I've asked for something, what's going on? Come on, I want my report, where's my report? It takes time to download. All right, fine. Where's my report? I have no idea where my bloody... What? Son of a... And that's, you know, this is what happens when people ask for requests that take a long time. So, you know, if you want to download your Excel report and it's got 1 million lines in it and it takes too long to do, this happens. Users don't like this. Users don't like this at all. But that's all we have with HTTP. It's give me what I want and I'll sit here and wait. Okay? It's not quite the same with WebSockets. So with WebSockets, the server can tell me when it's done, when it feels like it. So I can say, please build me this report, and the server can immediately say, okay, I'm getting on with that. Okay? So then you can go off and be more productive, and you can actually start to do other things on your website. Okay? And then over time, when the server is actually ready, the server will tell me, here's your answer and here's your spreadsheet. Okay? That is a much better user experience, okay? Because your browser's now not tied up, and actually they can go to other areas on your website. They don't actually even have to stay on this page, okay? That is an infinitely better user experience than a little spinner going, I'm waiting, there's nothing going on, when are you going to be done? This is much better for your users. Users don't want to call the help desk, okay? But they do, because your server is going slow, or your apps are going slow, or they've asked for something that's really, really stupid and that takes forever to actually build. Okay? Everything that's important to me about building websites and why I'm really excited about WebSockets is because you can actually build a better user experience. It doesn't mean the code's any easier or harder for you as a developer, but you can actually build better experiences. Right. So WebSockets is a defined standard. Okay? It's part of the HTML5, and the actual communication protocol, like HTTP protocol, is well defined. So it means all of your different browser vendors are going to do it in the same way, which is good. It's very good for you, in fact, because then you don't have to worry about it. It is cross-domain. So for those of you who've had the Ajax pain of cores, where you actually have to take data and information from another website, and your browser doesn't let you, because we have cross-site scripting problems, when you have a JavaScript request, the cross-site scripting can cause JavaScript to execute on your browser. That's a problem. We have to be careful about that. But because we're only communicating with text, we can't do anything. You know, something happens on your browser and it goes, oh, I've got some text. So it's okay to be cross-domain. There are no security issues with that. And you can also do it over SSL. So even though you're sending text, you don't want somebody reading it or listening to it on the network or what have you. Basically, overall, this is not actually bleeding edge anymore at all. It really isn't. This really is part of virtually every browser that you guys have to use. So going back to the efficiency, probably most people in this room don't really care because, you know, if you're using a notes server, if you have 100 users logged in at the same time, good for you, you know, which means you have an actual concurrency of probably 2. Not a big deal. But if you go back to the overhead, if we think the CNN site, for example, or Twitter, or Facebook, or things like this, the more and more time passes and the more and more requests happen, the difference in that overhead, as opposed to just the WebSocket, is enormous. Okay? So if you have applications that really need to scale to a lot of communication over a lot of people all at the same time, it's extremely efficient. When can you use WebSockets? So, hands up, who still uses IE9?
Word. Personally?
Okay, at work, obviously. 1, 2 people, 3 people, 4, 5. No, you don't.
But I do.
You have to support a customer that uses IE9, but
IE8.
IE8. Oh, yeah, that's not good. Well, it's not going to work in that either. Sorry.
Everybody's still having to support
Right.
IE6. Just checking.
Okay, I can't help with that. It's not. All right. So basically,
Microsoft could help with that.
every other browser that anybody cares about except old Android, and nobody uses Opera anyway. So basically, IE 10 and above, you can use WebSockets. So for the most part, everybody can use it. It works on modern Android, and it works on, and this is Android browser, this is not Chrome on Android. If you use Chrome on Android, it works on all versions of Chrome on Android. So yeah, you can use this, you can totally use this. And if you ever worry, if you've never seen this before, this Can I Use website is fantastic. It will basically lay out for you like this. Any of the HTML5 or CSS or anything like that, it will actually tell you what browsers support that feature that you're looking for. It's extremely helpful. So, use cases. Time is it? Oh, I'm going too quickly. Right, so when is this actually helpful? All right, so you've all got smartphones, or you all know what they are. Skype. That's a really great use case for a WebSocket. Because when I send out a message to 10 people in a room, they all get the message. Okay, it goes out to them. It's not 10 people going, has Marky said something, has Marky said something, has Marky said something, which is, as good as that would be for my ego, it's not very efficient, because I don't say very much. If you imagine you're actually on your corporate intranet and someone's on their intranet all day, something requiring action, so like an admin dashboard, number of outstanding tickets, or somebody's done something stupid in exactly the same way as CNN, you want to be able to flash that up to the admin, but you want them to get it when they're ready. You don't want them to get it, you know, when they have to keep asking for it. General notification. So I worked for, let's just say, part of the DoD. For quite a long time, and one of the requirements was, if we have an emergency lockdown, it must be on the intranet within 15 minutes. So basically we would get a call, and I'm not kidding you, would actually go and do something in production and get that online, although it was 10 years ago. So we did things on production 10 years ago. But it always went on the front page, or you had to build something onto every page that basically did a lookup to a configuration document that said, is something bad going on? Okay, so every single page on the internet had an overhead of this lookup, because that was part of the requirements. Well, if you did it in WebSockets, all you'd have to do would be to listen for WebSocket messages on every page, and nothing would ever happen until something actually happened, and then it would just get bombarded out. Everybody needs to panic and run for the shelters. Okay? And another good one of instant notification is something like a stop ticker. Okay? Constantly, you've seen the graphs that change with the stop tickers. So to be able to do that, it's what's the number, what's the number, what's the number, what's the number? Constantly asking. With all of that overhead, and the number comes back 2, 3, 7. That's an unnecessary overhead. So rapidly changing data is another good use case. And as I showed you before, if you know somebody wants to know something, and they're going to hang around on the site for a while, tell them when it's ready. So if you want to optimize, I mean, obviously in all of this, if you want to lower your bandwidth and memory usage, this is the way to go. But you also need to have a requirement where high bandwidth and high memory usage is a problem. You know, and again, scalability is definitely one of those. Control when they get information, and again, notification wherever they are. So on any page within the domain, I can send them a message that says, Marky, do this. I don't care what page they're looking at, I don't care what they're actually doing at that time. I can send them a message regardless of where they are on my site. That's very useful. It's almost like I'm repeating myself. Yeah. Social feeds, that's another good one. Okay. Did anybody actually use the connections mail, whatever it was called in the top right that said this is all the stuff that's going on? What was it called? The thingy feed?
Activity stream?
Yeah, activity stream. There you go. Anybody actually use that? You did? Well, yeah. Constant polling. Constant polling. Constant polling. All right? You don't need that with WebSockets because, oh, you've got a new email or somebody's done something. Only actually gets the information to the browser when it actually happens. you're sitting on your intranet, you're a manager, and you know, somebody has something that you need to take action on, whether it's, you know, Billy has expense report that needs doing, or something needs approving, you have to take action on something. Well, you could actually have the same control on every page that basically says, what is my activity? And it will get pushed to you and updated as it happens, so that if nothing happens, nothing changes. But it's on every page, and it can be the same message on every page. You don't actually have to change or go, well, if he's on the front page, then he can have that. But it also means on every page you're not doing another lookup. Every single page to say, what am I actually doing? Location-based applications. Oh, Uber. Perfect example. Or anything that uses Google Maps. If you're so for those of you that haven't seen Uber, when you actually make a request on your phone, you can see where the taxi is, and it draws you on a little map and it sends you all to you. Brilliant. Well, if he stopped at traffic lights, it's not very efficient for you to keep going, has he moved yet? Has he moved yet? Has he moved yet? In his car, he has a GPS locator that sends information to their server, and when he changes, their server sends it to me. Again, they've got millions of users. It's extremely useful and efficient for them to do it in this manner. Sports updates, for anybody that cares. You know, those of you who play fantasy football will want to see the scores updating. Again, constant polling, constant polling. And I know these are not necessarily business-related cases, but some things you can relate to. All right? So you're all in here because you're not using WebSockets. Why are we not using WebSockets? Well, I know. Search engine optimization. So Google pings websites, looks for a response. It's all HTTP. Okay? If your entire site is built using JavaScript, Google used to have a problem with that. It's kind of getting better, but it's still not very good at being able to handle that. If the information on your website is built using a WebSocket message, Google will never see it. Okay? So, but again, for our business internal operations, I don't really care about Google, you know? HTTP really does have some good points. I mean, of all of that, there's a good reason why all of that information is sent in a header, at least in the initial request. When you guys do, are they on an iPad? It's an HTTP header that tells you that. Or, you know, what server am I looking at? What language is this person looking? That's all in the HTTP header. Are they logged in? Multiplexing. What that means is there's actually some efficiency in the communication in that in HTTP 1.1 you can actually send multiple pieces of information over the same connection. So your browser can actually say, can you give me these 5 things? And they can all come back at the same time. You can't really do that with WebSockets. Gzipping. So for those of you that don't know, most web servers, instead of sending the page that's 100K, they actually, on the fly, zip it on the server, sends 20K, and then your browser says, oh, it's zipped, and then it unzips it on the fly, which actually makes the page load faster. So there are very good things about HTTP. Really important corporately, firewalls understand HTTP, because firewalls can be set up that certain headers must be in the communication, otherwise I'm not going to let this traffic through. So that's a lot harder when there's no header, it's just a piece of text, and the firewall goes, I'll have a look at that, because you really have no way of testing it. Now, I'm not saying that that's a common use case, but it is a use case in certain organizations and environments. So, WebSocket servers. You're going to see a very specific web server not on this list. And pretty much everybody else's web server is on this list. Look at that. Mostly Java 7 because of when WebSockets came out, when people started to adopting it. It's not because it's Java 7. It just kind of came out at that time and it became, you know, doable as part of the Java 7. WebSpheres, IBM, JBoss Jetty. Jetty and JWebSocket are actually very lightweight Java servers specifically built to be able to do WebSockets. So you can actually install these on your Domino server as an OSGI plugin, and I'll come to talk to you about that in a minute. And its sole purpose is to handle WebSockets communication. It's actually very efficient. Tomcat is another one. So this is a little bit of a cheat. Domino does not support WebSockets. My good friend, Pete Jansen, is well aware of my desire for Domino to do WebSockets, but apparently not enough of his customers care. You know, there's only like 3 little people working for him and they have a lot to do, and unless it's a priority, it will never get done. It's actually not that hard. It would actually not be that hard to add WebSocket support to a Domino server, but it's not there. But a very, very smart man called Mark Ambler actually made it happen by turning the JWebSockets server into an OSGI plugin. This is actually out there on OpenNTF. You can actually go download it for yourself. I wrote a blog post about it. So that was over a year ago, and I complained about it over a year before that, and it's not a priority, it's not happening. The really nice thing about this is what he's done is, if you want to send a WebSockets message, you actually create a notes document in his database, and then his code picks up the fact that there's a new document, reads the document, takes the message, sends it where you want it to go. So to actually build it into Domino workflow is actually really kind of nice. But obviously it's very specific to Domino. For Node.js, I'm going to talk about Socket.io today, because it really has become very quickly the de facto way of doing WebSockets communication on a Node server. That's what I'm going to show you today. And the beauty of that for me is you're writing JavaScript code on the server to send a message, and you're using JavaScript on the client to interpret and understand the message. So that really makes it, I think, really easy to be able to understand and actually incorporate this into your applications. But fundamentally what this means is if you have a Domino server, you do not have a WebSockets server. So that means you have to have a WebSockets server as well. So whether that means in your organization that you either go via Mark's implementation with the OSGI plugin, or you actually have to stand up a WebSockets server as well, you have to do that. It does not work in Domino today. If you think by the end of this presentation that it should, get on Twitter, and I should have put a slide up about this, email your representative and tell him you want WebSockets. I think we might do that actually.
Have an email your rep day?
No, let's go to the top. Reps are useless.
I'll change that org position.
Seriously.
Yeah, let's not get silly now.
Okay. All right. So to set up, so Socket.io. So you guys know what jQuery is. It's a JavaScript library that does stuff for you. So instead of you have to typing out a lot of JavaScript and a for loop and what have you, you just type out a simple command. Socket.io is basically the same thing. So I genuinely do not know how they make it work on the Node.js side on the server, and I genuinely don't care. I really don't. But to install it on a Node server is very, very simple. 3 simple instructions. Basically, install Node, and then on top of that, install Express, which I'm not going to go into, but if you're ever going to do Node, you need to learn about Express. Express makes Node easier, and then Socket.io goes on top of Node using Express, but 3 lines and it's done. On the client side, it's just one JavaScript library. That's it. Everything, and then in here, it knows how to communicate via WebSockets communication with the server. It really doesn't get much simpler than that. So what choices do you have with your WebSockets communication? So with Socket.io, a lot. You can actually send a message directly to a user, any user. So as long as I know that Mark is there and Mark has assigned a certain socket ID, I can always send a message to Mark, regardless of where he is on my site. He will always be there and I will send that message. It doesn't mean he's necessarily listening, but I can always send that to him and I will know where he is for this session. You can send it to anybody on a particular route. So what that means is, I could send a message to anybody looking at a specific X page. And I'm going to show you an example of that. So anybody that's looking at this view, and the view is updated, in the Notes client you get a nice little twisty on the top, okay? Notes tells you something has changed. It doesn't refresh it, that's entirely up to you, but Notes tells you something has changed, okay? You can send group messages to people in a room. You can actually build your own room. So anybody on this page, that page, and this page, if they're on any one of those pages, so let's say that they're actually within a certain area of your, let's say they're in the procurement area of your website where you've got multiple X pages, anybody on those pages could get a message, could be relevant to them. Or you can send out a global message to anybody. You can be on any domain. So you can actually be on this website, or this website, or this site. So let's say you've got PSC internal, or you've got PSC, or you've got PSC another internal.com. Any of your users can be on any of those web pages as long as they're all connected to the same WebSockets server. That's extremely useful. Extremely useful. So any one of the different domains. So say for example, we have a customer that that their customers, every time they set out a new site for them, become that customer.thiswebsite.com. Okay? So this would allow me to send WebSockets to any one of those customers on any one of those pages all at the same time if I really needed to. Very, very powerful.
Mark,
Yes?
What's the security story there, though, across the domain? In terms of securing, does it still work within the authentication? Or is that completely outside of authentication?
It's completely outside of authentication. It has nothing to do with, so, yeah, it's completely outside of authentication. So, for you to be able to track that Mark Roden is this particular socket user, you actually have to store that in some kind of temporary cache that says Marky is this 16-digit socket ID. You can pick that up when the user connects initially, when the socket is actually created. There is an ID assigned. You know he's Marky because you're going to tell the socket server, hello, I'm Marky, and then you can associate it with the user. So if you were going to go for some kind of roles-based, I'm only going to tell these people that have that role, then I would create a room for that role. So then I could just arbitrarily send a message to the author's room, and then anybody with the author's role would get put into that room when they join the site, and then that's how I could control that.
Okay, so you have to, I see. So if you want to do something completely authenticated and secure that not just anybody can join, you just have to set that up. So that you.
But if they only connect to your WebSocket server from inside of an already authenticated site, then they'd never get there until they were actually in your site.
Well, except that because it comes from the client side, anybody who's seen that code could do it on their own. If you weren't careful, you'd have to come up with some kind of
Correct.
method to check that.
Yes, you could. If someone was smart enough, they could get in and say and look at your code, but they could only join the WebSocket server from that domain. So if they still have to be authenticated to get into that domain, they'd still actually have to be on that page to actually create the connection in the first place. So
they can't just connect, they'd have to come from your domain.
you would control that on the server side. You would say where has this message actually come from?
And then authenticate them first. If they weren't already authenticated, you have to authenticate them somehow.
Yeah, you'd probably have to figure that
What
out.
you want to do is you want to include something on the page that includes a timestamp and a digital signature that you then verify
Yes.
as it gets passed back to your socket server.
Yeah.
And verifies that that socket link was created within X number of seconds.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so this is what the message looks like on the Node.js server-side JavaScript side. So I'm going to emit a message, and let's call it an event. I mean, just to be analogous, you guys know in a browser you have an on-click event, an on-change event. You add an event listener, you can call it anything you want. For the sake of this conversation, this is going to be the hi event, and I'm going to say, hi everybody. Or you can actually reduce this down to one line. That's the, you can do all of your logic to figure out why I should send this message, but actually sending the message is very, very simple. And when the message goes out, this is on the client side, I connect to my WebSocket server, and then very similar notation, when the socket hears the hi event, take the data that is sent from the hi event and send it to this hi event function that basically says, hello, and there's my data. And because the data was everyone, that's it. That's all that was sent. So if I want to send some JSON with attribute value pairs and what have you, I would then have to do some parsing of the data in here, but you wrote this code, you know what message is going to be sent, so you would then know how to parse it. And we'll see some of that in the example. Sending to a namespace page, very, very similar, but you basically just declare your namespace page. It says anybody that matches this route on the web page. So when they actually, if they're on there, then it's basically the same thing, but it's now a namespaced object as opposed to just the socket.emit. Same thing with a room. So basically, and I'll show you that from the client side and to how to register somebody with a room, but basically it's the same thing except we add to a room. So the notation is very, very easy to use. And then for a targeted message, instead of saying a room, we would actually just put the individual socket ID in there, and it would only go out to that user. So let's take a chat example. So if you were going to do a chat example, when somebody comes into the chat, you want to be able to send everybody a message to say, Mark, he's joined the chat. So when you connect, there's always a connection event that happens on the server. So, and then on a connection, what I do is I then broadcast, basically socket.emit, I send the message event and some data, whatever that is. So in this particular case, what this actually means is, on the client side, I send a message, WebSocket message, and on the server, it goes, oh, well when I hear a message, send a message back out to everybody. Okay, so the client says, I'm going to do this, the server says, oh, okay, I'll do that, but I'll do it to everybody. And then on the client side, right, when I hear the message event and some data is sent, do this. And then you use a little bit of jQuery that basically says, add the message onto the screen. That's how a chat works. I send a message, you guys get this on the page that says, add that text to the screen. I mean, none of this is magic. It's not going to do it for you. You're going to actually have to write some code to manage the message when it arrives. But this is the internet. Go Google, how do I do WebSockets? Look at Stack Overflow. I didn't come up with this. I've read somebody else's blog. You know, I'm way too lazy to figure this out for myself. I steal it from other people. But then once you've stolen it from other people, and you go, ah, that's how it works, you can then adapt it to everything that you want to do. Okay, so, demonstration time. Alright, so I'm actually going to do the demo out of orders. Alright, so, okay, what we have here is a notes view, and I will admit that it's an out-of-the-box data view. None of my applications use this, but for the sake of this particular example, it was easy to set up. Okay? So in Chrome, if you actually look at the Network tab, you can actually see WebSocket specific traffic. So if I do a refresh, I can see this is all of the traffic that is being sent over this particular WebSocket. Right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a different browser. Oh, look at that. Here's one I prepared earlier. Okay. So, over here on the left, there is nothing going on. Over here on the right, I'm going to edit this individual. I'm going to be actually... I'm going to edit this individual. Alright, and when I save, the instant I hit save, watch what happens on the left. Immediately, that message was sent out that says refresh, okay, and basically various pieces of information that I use, and you'll notice that this appeared up here. And when I'm on here and I click that, I get Adrian1234. Okay, so if I do this browser, and we go there as well, okay. So you're going to have to see both of these at the same time. I go in over here, I've got three different, I'm logged in as me in all three of them, but you guys get the idea. As soon as I hit save, immediately appears on the other two. And it doesn't matter how many users that is. There's one message from the server saying, hey, tell everybody that's here something has changed. And only for that page, or that room, or that namespace, and then they immediately know, oh, something's changed. Okay? Because
built into notes views already?
no.
You code for this view.
Yes. Yeah. This is the code for this view. And I don't even know where it is. If we have time at the end, I'll show you how I do it. But I basically listen for this refresh event. And as soon as that refresh event happens, I run a little bit of code that says, make the twirly icon visible. The twirly icon always does a partial refresh of the view. So what I can also do is I could just refresh the view. But you might not actually want to do that. That might actually irritate your users. So there's a balance. Okay? So, alright, so here's the game. For those of you get your phones out. Alright, we're going to play hot potato. Alright? And to be able to do this, what you're going to do is you're going to see a page that looks like this, and on your iPhone you've got to push done to make this work, and this is where the internet in here doesn't work. Alright, so I'm waiting for people to join. Alright, so let's get this up, if I can pull that up. It's hp.mybluemix.net. And as people join, you will see that the thing on the left updates. Come on. See where I should have been already. Okay. So somebody's joined. Number of people have joined. Okay. So it's updating my page. Steve Cobb has joined.
What's the URL again, Mark?
hp.mybluemix.net. And when we get to 10, we're going to start. Okay? So, those of you that saw the front page, this is the PSC demo room. You could make up any room you want, and as long as you all join the same room, you can all play this game. Anybody else playing?
How do you make it? After you push your name in, how do you make it go?
Push go on your... just.
Oh, on the phone? Yeah. I got you.
Somebody's actually playing in a different room. Turn that off. All right. Well, let's go with it. Let's go with this. Okay. So somebody's playing in a different room. That shouldn't have started.
Why not work?
His game already started.
Somebody's already in the game. All right. Well, for those of you who are on here, we'll start this game. And this is when the connection dies. Well, some of you are playing.
Yeah. So what does it mean? It says the game already started.
Yeah, it means you can't actually come in.
Why?
But
Yeah, Glenn, get close and find out.
bloody hell.
That shard is already full.
You know, I tested this with my kids, and they were perfectly okay with this.
You need more kids.
It could be that my connection is just crap over the.
Game closed.
I just joined again. It says total players.
Bloody! It's the wireless connection in here.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, sure.
Right, now I can't show you how it works because the game's already started, because somebody else started the game.
Can we start it over?
We can.
Start a new room.
Alright, somebody come in the PSC Demo 1 room quickly. I'm player number 2. Who's? You people! Alright, please, whoever's started PSC Demo 1, can you please start it so we can see the WebSockets communication that's actually going on in here? God, it's like herding cats. There we go, right, get set, go. Now, so, you can see the communication that's going on in the bottom, okay?
I'm a winner.
Notice 9 is it, so he has to swipe. But it keeps telling me every time somebody's it and someone is changing. Okay, and you can see the communication that's going on at the bottom.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Hey.
Sorry, Ulrich. Alright, So then it passes on to the next person. So now Nick is it. But you see, this is the only information that's coming backwards and forwards. Good Lord.
You wanted this.
No.
You're demoing to a bunch of geeks, right?
Did you expect some other result just out of curiosity?
You know, stupid me. All right, okay. So you guys get the idea, though, right? You know how this is the only communication. So I'm actually lost because I was it and I've gone out. But that's the only communication, and when you're it, nobody else knows until they swipe. And when they swipe, a message is immediately sent to everybody who's playing, and the next person goes on, and it's just randomly selected on the server as to who's next. Okay? So it's a very simple, childish game, but played by children.
Yes, we are.
At least you know your audience.
But this is it. This is the only communication that's going on. It's enough to update the text that's in the message, and then make a determination based on if you're it, say you're it, and do something. If not, then you know somebody else is it.
I'm curious why then, like CNN doesn't use this, at least for the browsers that will allow it.
That I do not know.
That's a very good question. Is what that
So what CNN can also do is they can also track the number of concurrent users who are constantly pinging them. If you have somebody that's just waiting, they don't know you're there.
So the WebSocket side, the server side, has no way to tell how many sockets are on it?
Actually, there is a disconnected message that gets sent out when. So when you shut the page down, it does actually send a message back saying you've been disconnected. But
So you can track when a user leaves. A specific
Correct.
Loser.
wow.
Well, presumably there's got to be a keep alive then going on, so if somebody's just browser dies, they've also left because of browser disconnect.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's got to be part of the spec.
Yes. Yeah, there is a disconnect message sent, I guess, before the browser dies.
Well, okay, but in the case of just somebody powering down, it would still at some point detect that they were gone. The server has to.
It doesn't?
No, so you have to listen for the unload event if you browse away from the page. If you get disconnected, if your internet disconnects, there's no way to tell that you are off. The server sends out, usually the server sends out a Pong message every minute, and that's how they track you. So the server can know that you're gone if after 1 minute you don't respond.
Yeah, there you go. You can
But the
see
client
it's
doesn't
sending out a
client
message to
doesn't
say,
know.
are you still there?
And how, honestly, I have to ask this, how is this with firewalls? I mean, is this one of these things like SIP where it's great if you're in the same room, but if you actually want to make a telephone call to somebody who's on the other side of any firewall ever created by anyone, you're out of luck?
Well, what port is it going out on?
80.
Oh, it's on 8. Okay.
Yeah, it's on 80.
Or 443.
Or 443. Well, actually, it doesn't have to be on 443 because you can actually encrypt the message. Even if you're still on 80, you actually encrypt the message because you're nothing to do with HTTPS at all. It doesn't actually matter what port you're on, but you actually say whether the message is encrypted or not. And that's all set up as part of the communication setup when you actually just initiate
The protocol just handles that, you say encrypt,
Yes.
and it does.
Yes. Yep. Yep. But obviously that wouldn't work so well for this particular demo because you wouldn't be able to read it. So, right. Okay, so that's two of my demos. And seeing as I'm running a little short on time, the other demo I was basically going to show you is basically a chat room. Okay, very similar idea. It's out there. You guys can go play with it whenever you want. I'm not going to leave it on the screen because you're going to listen to me. I know you're not going to listen to me, but that's beside the point.
You don't want to give your room access to write stuff on your screen anyway.
That's the other reason. I'm not showing what you people are going to say on the screen. I don't trust you. Okay, so in conclusion, WebSockets is a web standard. It is available on all browsers, IE 10 and above. It is extremely efficient in the way that it does its communication, but that does actually lose some of the advantages of HTTP. You have to actually consider it depending on your particular situation and requirements. It allows you to push to users. So one of the other demos that I have, but I didn't actually do today, like I said, is you can actually make a request on one page and then go navigate somewhere else. as long as you're still connected to that WebSocket server, when the WebSocket says, hey Marky, something's changed, it doesn't matter where you are. So you don't have to stay on the same page. So we've all had to create Excel reports and what have you know, document generation that takes a long time. So another way that we do it is we basically send it off and we have a schedule agent do it and we email you when it's done. It's a bit lame. You know, if the user's still on the site, just pop up a little message that says, hey, it's ready, here's a link to it, you can go get it.
Quick question, one thing I'm not clear on, is that do you have to put code on every page to listen?
Yes,
Okay.
you would. But so what you would do is you would basically build your overall message JavaScript that allows you to do the WebSockets. First time you connect to it, it's going to cache websockets.js, and then depending on how much you want to do with the communication is entirely up to you, but it's not going to be enormous, and it's going to be cached every page, so it won't matter after the first time. Okay. It is cross-domain. That's awesome. Can't stand cores. Security's a pain in the butt. Hate it. And modern browsers are web compatible. And overall, it's really kind of cool. You guys all have the skills to be able to use this. Without plugging Bluemix, you may have noticed I'm running this in Bluemix. That's because it gives me access to a node server because I don't have a node server running in my environment. So you can go find a node server in lots of different places, lots of different ways. I highly encourage all of you to go and learn a little bit about Node.js. If you can write JavaScript, you can do Node.js, and it is an infinitely better web browser than the Domino HTTP browser. Okay, and I'm not saying this because Pete's not in the room, but the Domino HTTP browser is appalling as a server. No, the HTTP server part of the Domino server is appalling. As web servers go, it's extremely limited. It does not scale, but for the most part does the job that we need it to do. You would never run CNN on a Domino web server, for example. Okay, so I could go into Node, but Matt did that yesterday. So there you go. If you want to get in touch with me, that's the way to do it. That's not my Twitter account at all. So don't do that. It's at Marky Roden. You know, someone should proofread these. But if you want to hear anything more about WebSockets, X pages, application modernization, or anything, get in touch. I've got some cards. Does anybody have any questions?
The OSGI plugin, is that just a very limited use case where you put out documents and read them in the browser, or is that something that has an API that you can actually, you know, do other stuff with?
So the way he does it is he basically has a WebSocket.nsf that sits on the server, and then basically in your workflow you would send an email, for example, and then create a document in this particular WebSockets database to get sent out as a WebSocket message. Once it's sent it out, it then flags it and parks it so it's not in the queue anymore. So you can actually add it into any workflow in any of your applications that basically then just sends out a message. You can actually use the Socket.io front-end code to then listen for those messages. But it's as simple as creating a document, and on that document you create fields that says what message do you want to send, and that's all you have to do. It's actually really rather elegant, actually. But the WebSocket server is a web server, and it can't run on port 80 because Domino's already running on port 80, so it actually has to run on a different port. That's the only downside, because most corporate don't like other random ports running in their environment, and you have no choice. Now, you could set up a different Domino server that only ran on port 80, and you ran the WebSocket server on that port 80, and you moved your Domino around, but that's kind of complicated. So go take a look at it. It is really elegant solution for Domino, but I don't know that it's an enterprise solution, really. Up to you. If it meets your use cases, then go for it.
So really the best solution is to have a Node.js
server
somewhere else. Whether you get that, I guess, other than Bluemix, there's other
web, you know, WebSphere will do it as well. So, you know, people that have got WebSphere Portal or other WebSphere, what have you, you can actually use WebSphere for it as well. But yeah, it depends.
No longer a 5-minute project then.
Right. So use Node. Yes, sir.
So I have a fairly complex application, and all the different pages have different things. Would I just constantly push out all different events and just have the page say, if it's this event, you can ignore it, and just like a generic handler that says, if you're on this page, then do this, otherwise just discard it?
Yep.
Would that negate the value?
Well,
Because
so
I'm now
what?
pushing out so many events?
Well, so, or what you would do is you could create a room for every page. So then only people who are on that page get that
Yeah,
message.
event.
Yeah. That's so all that namespace. You can actually, that namespace could be frontpage.xsp or nextpage.xsp.
Okay.
So you'd only send the message to the people in that room, rather than shotgun to everybody and then say the browser, if I'm on this page and I'm doing this, then only do that.
The second time I got it.
Right. Dave.
So then, if you were to have something that notified, if you're doing a workflow and you wanted to notify only the person who needs to approve, then you would need to have a separate room for each of your approvers?
So, so, like I alluded to earlier, when you connect to the WebSocket, you get an ID that is your socket ID. In the notes solution that I showed you, what he does is he has a view of Marky Roden and that socket ID, so that he knows when you create a document that needs to go to Marky Roden, it goes and it actually gets the ID off the document, and then it knows how to send it to you. So that's how that's solved. In the Node world or in Bluemix, I would probably use a Redis NoSQL server. It's an in-memory NoSQL cache that is very quick and very easy, and I would just create a very simple lookup table in there to say, oh, Marky is that socket ID. And then you need to handle when they disconnect to go and either remove that notes document or actually go and remove the whatever table. So you need a separate reference table that goes Marky Roden /PSC is that WebSocket ID, and then you send it just to that ID. Anybody else?
You use this as like a document locking solution to show this person's in edit mode, these people are watching the document, this guy is left, and now it's...
Yes, absolutely you could. Absolutely you could. Yep, yes, that's a really good use case actually, yes. Notify me when this document becomes unlocked. Absolutely, totally. Wow, well done, Dave. Well done, Dave.
Go David.
Although I will
actually do the notes tonight.
I will actually give Dave credit. It was actually his idea for doing the refresh on the notes view with the spinning. And he doesn't remember that. But that was actually his idea.
I have a lot of ideas that I can't do myself.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much indeed, everybody.